Hey everyone, Thyworm here with a Wolcen guide for Endgame. This video contains story spoilers. You're either new here or you're lost in the progression to Endgame or you want to know what has changed in the last patch, but this guide has got you covered, with timestamps. And please subscribe for more ARPG content including Wolcen. I'll just start at the start, creating a new character, which is what I did. Not much has changed since the latest patch, called Endgame. Still, the regular 3 acts from the original Wolcen are there, and you still need to complete the acts by fighting your own family. It'll take a few hours to move through the acts, depending on your build. However, after you're done with the first 3 acts, the devs introduced another campaign act, number 4, called Eternal Siege, which plays out very differently. It is not so much a storyline in a world anymore, but rather it is roguelite content, the devs call it, but it's a little bit misleading in my opinion. We'll get to that. As soon as chapter 4 begins, you'll have more conversations at the palace and you will be installed as regent of the city. You will need to unlock 3 quests from Oshara's council in order to progress the game by starting the projects. To progress the project, you need to do a random operation from the war table. Complete any operation and the next step in the Oshara quest line becomes available. You can now do the actual quest. Do this 3 times and you will receive a quest to fight Oshara called Ashfall. After defeating Oshara, Mother of Dragons, the devs serve you the Mother of Plot Twists, because after touching the dragon egg you are lost in some sort of time loop and the new endgame boss presents himself to you in the palace. You can try all you want, but you can't defeat him. Your fate is sealed this time, and using a pretty cool cinematic you are launched back into town with a clear goal: you need to stop Ahriman. A few things happened. First, additional buildings have unlocked in the town builder. There is the Seeker's Garrison, which provides you with decent gold income, the West Wing of the Primordial Institute providing a 5th skill slot, the Vault, additional stash tabs, the Stormfall Palace, which can be used to increase productivity, and the Regent Assembly, a new building. Here, you can spend the resources to make Ahriman's upcoming invasion weaker, and my tip would be to get gold from the Seekers, pick up as many rares as you can during operations, sell all of them, and put all your resources into the Regent Assembly to make the fight with Ahriman easier. Because you have to defeat Ahriman to unlock the actual endgame mode called Champion of Stormfall, so wasting time in this part of the game isn't particularly great. At the war table you see a new UI element, if you've played Wolcen before that is. At the top is a bar which indicates when Ahriman will attack. Below that, the circles, that indicates which ability of Ahriman will be weaker. And you can make abilities weaker by defeating his lieutenants, which occasionally spawn, indicated by the bar below these circular icons. I managed to spawn 6 or 7 lieutenants before Ahriman arrived, and killing them ensures Ahriman is weaker. A tip here, pay attention to the single attack the lieutenant is using. They're only using 1 attack, because the boss Ahriman will be using all of these attacks in the boss fight. You can already get used to some of them. In the meantime, you're advised to do operations, build defenses and level up so you can take on Ahriman. A decent build here clearly helps, and if you enjoy minions, I have a very good summoner build I played which takes care of this without a sweat. Link in the description. Assuming you do this for a while, Ahriman at some point arrives, triggering an event. There are a bunch of cinematics and you're dropped into the city, which is on fire because of the boss. You will need to close 3 portals first to stop Ahriman's reinforcements from coming in, and then you talk to some NPCs at the center and you're off to the palace to face Ahriman. You're dealing with a 3-stage fight here. In the first stage, Ahriman uses all sorts of abilities. He summons some minions, and the biggest advice I can give you is to not stand in anything that is red, pretty much. His attacks are well telegraphed, you should be able to dodge those. There is one area-wide attack to which I'm dying over here that covers the entire screen but a small spot. Make sure to be in that spot and you will be fine. Any defensive building or wards you built during the preparations will show up here and make this part a lot easier. If you successfully killed his lieutenants, his attacks are now weaker. Still, Ahriman is level 65 and you're likely not level 65, so the fight can be rough. Around 10% health the second phase triggers. Phase 2 is very easy. Ahriman isn't here, only Heimlock and Valyria are. You will need to beat them and then use a staff to exorcise their demons. This is very straightforward. Phase 3 starts and Ahriman is back again. He uses a ton of abilities. This phase can be very rough. There is fire everywhere, but just try to dodge as best as you can, and I suppose resistances help too if you can get that. At certain points in the fight, when he does this meteor shower rain, he seems to be invulnerable. Ultimately, there are definitely moments in the fight he doesn't do much, and you have to strike at those times. Hopefully you can defeat him, otherwise the circle repeats. The roguelite element, if you will, but even if it isn't a particularly fun one, because significant parts of the endgame are closed off until you defeat the boss. Should you do so, however, then the credits roll once more, permanently this time. You will close out the storyline of Act 4 and the true endgame begins. From here on, the entire town is available for you to unlock, and let me walk you through the various progression systems available. First, you have the town building. I would advise to unlock your income buildings first, so that's the Seeker's Garrison, the Stormfall Shipyard and the Stormfall Trade Assembly. I would always prioritize those first and prioritize the projects available in those buildings, as it is simply passive income of Primordial Affinity and Gold. You will need both. Then I would focus on buildings that upgrade your character, so the Primordial Institute West for the 5th skill and the Anoract Laboratory to duplicate skills, if your build has duplicate skills. The Energy Installator and Siphon Chamber can be very useful to turn Primordial Affinity into gold and vice versa. Everything else you should focus on later, in my opinion, and arguably the same is true for the new endgame building, the Regent Assembly. This thing was crucial to get to this stage, the endgame, but the first couple of times Ahriman spawns in the actual endgame, you might not necessarily want to focus on this building or want to focus on beating him, but rather first use the resources available to you to develop the city. Because every other building yields long-term bonuses and this one doesn't. You would like your character power, in my opinion, rather than give Ahriman a bit more loot. That's it for the town building. Then let's get back to Ahriman here for just a second. Previously, when defeating a lieutenant, you didn't have a choice what to do, but now you do. You can either weaken an attack by Ahriman, which is what used to happen before by default, or you leave the attack as it is and grab 2 additional loot pieces from Ahriman instead once you defeat him. This is a nice risk-reward system. Talking about loot, the lieutenants and Ahriman drop specific loot introduced in this patch with special affixes, and it can be worth it. Apart from what I just told you, the Ahriman mechanic, the new roguelite endgame if you will, remains exactly the same. I will say though that at high difficulty, Ahriman becomes extremely dangerous, and building the defenses plus weakening him will be required unless you got a completely broken build. Let's talk a bit about operations, which are the maps of Wolcen, if you will. There are around 7 or so different operation types and a whole load of map layouts, so there is plenty of variety. Also inside of the operations there's plenty of stuff happening. I'm over 200 hours into Wolcen and I'm still not bored of this system, so I'm liking it. Operations like Headhunt and Onslaught can be completed quickly for a bunch of skulls and rewards. Wrath of Saracel and Expedition take much longer but have specific gear, just like the lieutenants, indicated by a special icon. This gear has then specific affixes, which can be an absolute game changer. By doing operations, you are progressing every other game system, as it gives you production to build your town, skulls for difficulty, and of course gear and experience for your character. Then the last and final progression system, this is the skull system, that's what I call it at least. Every time you complete an operation, you earn skulls depending on the operation and how difficult it is. How many you get is indicated by the operation itself. It varies from 3 to 12 skulls, and those skulls unlock higher tier difficulties, divided across around 7 tiers or so. Each tier has a range of difficulty levels inside of it, and if you beat all of those difficulty levels within a tier, you unlock the next tier. The highest tier is called Sovereign, and the highest difficulty level in that tier is 217. When you're just starting out with the skull system, you're likely starting around difficulty level 70 or so, to give an indication. And it is quite the grind to make it all the way to difficulty level 217, but you are progressing other systems in between as well, so I feel there is a good bunch of variety still. Whenever you do unlock the 217 difficulty level, you now have the option to progress to yet another tier, the Infinity tier. Here, you can spend the skulls you earned and by doing so increase the difficulty of the operations even further. But there are decent rewards as well. Let's say I spend 10 skulls and complete the operation. I now earn 10 attribute points, and I receive back double my skulls as a reward, so I get 20 in return. Now, a big caveat here is that I have only 1 revive in this operation instead of 3. The higher the difficulty level, the more negative modifiers the operation has, and at this point, I need to basically survive the operation without dying in order to reap the rewards. So it's smart to pick an operation you're comfortable with, one with just 1 star, meaning it's not too difficult, and then spend a bunch of skulls. The infinite mode indicates your record, saying how many skulls you successfully beat, and that's also how many attribute points you got. You can see my record is 60. If I spend another 40 on the next operation, nothing happens. I need to beat my current record of 60 to, let's say, 80, and then I receive 20 more attribute points. But that's not all. Every 50 skulls you beat, so 50, 100, 150, etc., you get a passive point into the Gate of Fates, which is super cool. So my 60 skulls here ultimately net me 60 attribute points and 1 passive point. And this can go on forever, in theory at least, hence the name. And that's all there is to it. This is the entire endgame in Wolcen, barring some consumables you can use and quests with uber bosses you can replay, but you already killed those guys. But those are niche, self-explanatory. I don't really think I need to go into that. I hope this guide was useful. Don't forget to subscribe for more content. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.